I'm not trying to say anything as a prophet. I'm not a prophet. I'm not a son of a prophet, as Amos says. Like, I'm not trying to tell you what God thinks about this. I really want to address this from the one lens at which I think I can speak to, and that is wisdom. If somebody has a prophetic word about this, I'm happy to hear it. I don't have one. So I'm not making a determination or any kind of judgment call ultimately. I'm just saying there's something that lacks wisdom about what happened on at this event that I think we should talk about, because I do think there's something extremely dangerous about what this event represented that I think we need to understand and try to tease out. So I'll play this video for you guys, and Steve and I will talk about this. So this is from Rob on the Rock. I don't know who this guy is, but in trying to go down this rabbit hole of trying to figure out what this festival was about, he had the primary source material on YouTube. So I wanted to share this with you guys. So he kind of just what we're looking at here. And if you're listening to this, I'll try to describe it for those of you guys listening to the podcast, but you can also see this on YouTube. He's on the landing page for the actual festival that happened in the desert on October 7th. He's going to read over some of this landing page and then describe the event a little more detail.
To Israel. This was billed as you'll see here, Supernova Sukkot, and they had a giant inflatable Buddha statue that was featured over, you can see how big it was, over all the party goers. And this is called, they call it psytrance event, where they pound electronic music at very specific rhythmic intervals.
Okay, for those of you guys who can't see this, so we're going to go back and forth to the actual event page, but right now he's showing a picture of this giant, like 20, 30 foot, maybe inflatable Buddha that all the partygoers are surrounding, and a bunch of psychedelic colors. And he's describing some of the sounds. So anyway, I had no idea this was the sort of at the center of the festival, but yeah, we'll continue to let him tease out what was going on at this festival.
And drone kind of entrancing electronic sounds to get people to dance and get into certain kind of trances. I don't know firsthand whether there were drugs at this place, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if there were drug use to help create the state. But before we look at that, this is the abject company that put on this music festival. And as you see here, it says Tribe of Nova presents Supernova, October 6th through 7th, 2023, Universo Parallelo. But Tribe of Nova presents Supernova Sukkot. And you can just look at, they're calling it a Sukkot gathering for the Tribe of Nova. One thing I'll just notice, and not that I know that this is on purpose, but Nova backwards is avon, which is sin in Hebrew. It's one of the words for, but notice some of the language here. We are thrilled and filled with pride and excitement to announce the truly exceptional and unprecedented event. Little did they know that will take place for the very first time in Israel. And I think this is the 23rd such event, but first in Israel. Notice it says, yes, just as it sounds, the most powerful and meaningful psytrance music festival and one of the most recognized and active psytrance nations is already making its way here. I'll have the link to this is below.
A few of the details that he's pointing out here that were happening in this is that, so it's a psytrance festival. It's the first time this festival took place within Israel. It's a event that was hosted by this Brazilian entity that was doing these events in different parts of the world, and they're trying to make Israel a psytrance. They're calling it a trance nation. So I think the idea is that you take psychedelics. And so I think that part of what was happening, and he had also, if you keep reading, it talks about free love. The way I think to picture what was happening is that on the last day of Sukkot, which is the great day, as we read about in John 7, one of the greatest days, probably my favorite day in the entire Hebrew calendar, is the last day of Sukkot. I've got so many things God has revealed and done for our family on the last day of Sukkot. We talk about it every year as we celebrate the holiday. So this is really like the height of a holy day. And the whole point of the last day of Sukkot is the ultimate culmination of God dwelling with man, of us saying to God, and this is what we do as a family, we're just saying, God, please, we want you to come back. We want you to dwell with us. It's celebrating the dwelling of the oneness that we're going to eventually get to experience, that coming of the New Jerusalem. And so it's such an important holiday. And so on that day, and of course, they're billing it as an event, they chose to inflate this giant rainforest Buddha, to take drugs, engage in free love, and you can, speculate as to exactly what that means. and so they're partying all night around this, in this psytrance music festival, around this image. Now, if you were just to ask me, if I didn't know anything about October 7th, and you were just say, Jeremy, here, an event's about to happen. A bunch of young people are going to go out into the Negev, the desert of Israel. They're going to raise up a image of a false god. They're going to take drugs. They're going to party. They're going to around this thing, and they're all night long. They're going to be raving at a rave around this thing as they participate in drugs and sex. What do you think of that? I would say I can't possibly imagine anything more dangerous. That is unwise to do that. That is incredibly dangerous. Obviously, it's sinful, but from the perspective of a nation, that sounds incredibly dangerous. If you read the Bible at all, God can be provoked into action. There's nothing more provoking. And the morning I was actually going down this rabbit hole, I happened to be reading Deuteronomy 31, and it says in verse 16, the Lord said to Moses, behold, you are about to lie down with your fathers. Then this people will rise and whore after foreign gods among them in the land, and they are entering, and they will forsake me and break my covenant that I have made with them. Then my anger will be kindled against them in that day, and I will forsake them and hide my face from them, and they will be devoured, and many evils and troubles will come upon them. So they will say in that day, have not these evils come upon us, because our God is not among us. And I will surely hide my face in that day because of all the evil that they have done, because they have turned to other gods. Now, it doesn't shock me that I happen to be reading that passage, because there are so many places in the Old Testament where that same sentiment is described. I mean, you can hardly turn a page of the Old Testament and not hear something like that. It's very common. It's like the most common story in the whole Old Testament over and over again, whether starts with, of course, the Baal worship. In fact, my wife, I was just talking to April about this, and she's like, yeah, she had just been reading the story in First Kings about, the priests of Baal, and it says that they raved all day. And she's like, what's the word rave? What is a rave? And then when I was describing this event, I'm like, oh, this was a rave. And she's like, oh, that's actually in the Bible. So again, this is the most well attested to sequence of events in the entire Hebrew scriptures. You get a false image, you rave around it, and then bad things happen. You get a false image, you rave around it, and bad things happen. It's on repeat throughout the entire Hebrew scriptures. And so that's why I look at this and I'm like, okay, I'm not God. I'm not a prophet. I don't know why, but the picture of those paragliders and the inability for Israel to see what was coming their way. I have no definitive divine perspective on this. All I have is scripture. And when I read scripture, I'm like, please don't do this. This is not a good idea.